3:20. Glasgow Hamilton services, and it's been snowing for about an hour on the way up, and the motorway is disappearing. Don't look much out there, we ain't got much here, but on the way up it was getting a bit dicey where you couldn't actually see the motorway markings or anything. So I've stopped here, had a breather. I want to get the dogs out and give them a stretch, and I've had my bacon sarnie, so I've had my breakfast a bit early, but who cares. I was going to push a bit further up into the Highlands, but I think I'll go for plan B because this weather really is getting nasty and I don't want to push my luck. People stopping and everyone's having a break because it's hard work. It's a strain on your eyes on the road when you're trying to find the markings. Here, as I say, don't look too bad here because we're like a major city, so the buildings kind of protect the city, don't they? You know what I mean? But when you're going through the hills and in the more remote areas and the wind starts picking up, you can see the actual motorway disappearing as you're driving. First one lane, then a second, and then you're on the very near side lane and you're thinking, oh my God, if this one disappears, I'm going to be kind of guessing where it goes. Good fun though, when you've been driving like 8 hours. Give you an idea of the snow we got. Don't know if you can see it. Way up to machine. Oh, way up to machine. Sorry, you weren't very focused there. I don't know if I said earlier. We had such an adventure yesterday. I knew the weatherman was saying 3 to 4 inches in the higher ground, and that was about it. And it was an amber warning, so we weren't expecting this much snow. Well, I would say this is getting more severe than an amber. We arrived at the schoolhouse yesterday at 9 o'clock, had a short break. I was pulling a trolley with all my gear because this track that's normally really easy to cycle on or, you know, pull a trolley on would be easy. Now we had about 3 inches snow and I was pulling the trolley and it was fine. It was hard work, but it was fine. And I knew I'd take pauses, so that was fine. But then the snow kept coming like this, big heavy showers. And and it kept coming. So I had some wood on the trolley, so I dumped that at a spot. I knew I couldn't carry on pulling the trolley because it was getting like 5-6 inches, and things were getting difficult, and the time was shooting on. Now this trip from the schoolhouse to these Magoo Bothy and Bothy, it's about 4 hours, 4.5 on a good day. You got 2 river crossings, which one weren't too bad, the other one was a bit deeper. But anyway, setting off about 10ish from the schoolhouse, I was expecting maybe take a couple extra hours. The weather went too bad, as I say, but then the showers kicked in. I was still pulling that trolley at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and finally I dumped the trolley and we walked into Magoo's with the gear. When I say the gear, my gear for bedding, dogs, blankets, for chucking over them, and we just settled down. I never got no food because that was in another bag, but I was eating sweets, and believe it or not, I'm sorry to go on, but it's good advice for people. When I set off from the house, I like orange squash, so I made it extra fit, rich, so that when I was coming along I'd just water it down. But anyway, it never got to that point, so I was filling it with snow and it was turning into a slush. Now yeah, it was dropping my core temperature inside, but you need fluids, so it was a lesser of the two evils. So I was sucking on this slush all the way along, and I tell you what, it kept me going. Now there's a bit of the track left where it's been blowing. Temperatures -6, maybe -9 when the wind picks up. Very cold. So the distance is 8 miles, but because I was going to and fro, dropping gear off, pushing a trolley, we did 26 miles. Unbelievable. An experience. Sorry, I got cut off. An experience that teach you a lot, because the last 3 winters I come out and they predicted snow, and I've stayed quite close. Either Glenpean, Loch Dockard again, not too far. Easy ones. And we never got the snow they predicted, but this time we got the snow and more. And luckily, whoops, nearly slipped. Luckily, I was just picking the last bits up, and one of the estate guys came out in a 4x4, and he's picked the wood up for me and coal, and he's picked some of the last bits I was carrying a minute ago. Helped me out a lot, really appreciate it. He said this has been a bad winter so far. He's been going by the 4x4 and he says he won't make it tomorrow because the conditions are getting that bad. But I've got plenty of food, plenty of firewood, but it is thawing out in the next 2 days, so we're going to get a massive thaw. Now what will happen then is the track will be usable, but the 2 rivers are being spate, so we will get wet. But that'll be going back, and I've got to change again, and it won't be as cold. So, you know, ups and downs. But on a bike or walking it's a doddle. You know, in stroller. I'm lucky now because the 4x4 has left me a nice furrow and I can walk on this. That's why I was skating. There's a bit icy in there. But walking in the snow, murder. He says he never gets anyone up here in the winters. I can see why now. But isn't it beautiful? Dangerous place though. So yeah, I was trudging along from 10 to 12. What's that? 12 hours, no, 10 to 12, sorry, 10 hours. So my mind's gone. I've had no food. Did get sleep though. We all got 7 hours, 7.5 hours sleep, and we all were warm. I covered the dogs. There are plenty of covering. It was only when I let them out for a call of nature that they started shaking. Right, I've got to put you away. My fingers are going blue. I'll talk later and explain more later. Evening. Lie down, you. Puppy did it. 5:15. I've been fed, dogs have been fed. Lie down, rebel. I don't want you getting cold. Lie down. Every time I cover him, he uncovers himself. Silly dog. Took a weather measurement outside. It was minus 5.6. That's before it got dark. I would guess now it's easy minus 9 out there. In here, it's still cold, but we've got a fire burning away. If you go up to about dogs, you've got some warmth, but if you go further into the Bothy, there's still snow in the kettle, I think, over there. I'm sorry about the shadow of the phone, but I've got my torch on, and it won't, for some reason, do it wide angle with flash. So, as I was saying, looking back on the video I made earlier when we were coming back to the Bothy, when the estate owner brought the gear up for us, and realised it was 14 hours we'd been walking through. Now, giving you the kind of figures and times, but how can I describe the conditions? When we set off, blustery showers, wintry ones. Didn't feel too cold, probably 1-2 degrees. Sun came out during times when there was no showers, and it felt pretty nice. Met the estate owner on the way over, and he says, "Where are you going?" I says, "Magoo's." He says, "What, in this?" And I says, "Yeah." He says, "You do know it's going to get bad." I says, "Well, the weatherman says it's only going to be 2 or 3 inches." He says, "Oh no, it's going to get much worse." I thought, oh my God. So I was committed. I was like 4 miles in, and I thought, do I turn around and go where? You know, after I got all my gear out, it's all covered in snow and everything. So I thought 4, it's probably 7.5. So in total the journey. So I thought it's only 3.5 miles. So I thought I can do it. You know what I mean? That's where I made the mistake. I thought I could do it. I did, but I didn't realise the conditions we were going to hit. The snow got thicker, as I say, and pushing the trolley got harder. So where I was gaining like half a mile, maybe in 45 minutes, it started slowing really down to like half a mile in an hour. And I realised things are getting bad, you know. But again, I'd pushed by that time into about 5 or 6 miles. So to turn round would have been crazier because I was already committed. Then about 4 o'clock, 4:30, the sun, what sun we had, disappeared. The wintry storms still continued, but now the temperatures were dropping. I kept targeting to get across both little rivers on the way to Magoo's, drop the trolley off, and then just take the backpack that has all my sleeping gear and the blankets for the dogs. The mistake I made, and I really kicked myself after, was I could have fed the dogs at the trolley, you know, and they would have had some food. I was okay. Obviously, I'll get on to how we were eating in a minute, but I just wanted the dogs safe. And obviously I was worried about Stella because of her age, and the mileage we'd done was just crazy. Hence why today she's done nothing. So we kept approaching these rivers, but we didn't seem to be getting close. And by now, the snow was probably 7 or 8 inches. We were gaining like 100 yards probably every 30 minutes, which is just bonkers. It's just... But as I say, I was about, I don't know, I only had probably a mile and a half to go, 2 miles at the most. But it was just, the conditions just turned. And about 8, 9 o'clock, I kept saying to myself when I was trudging along, well, hopefully I'll make it by 8. Then 8 came and I thought, well, the way we're going to get here at 10. Then 10 o'clock came and we still ain't made the river. And I thought, my God. But I must add, and this is 100% true, there was no way life-threatening. I was perfectly warm. I had layers in my backpack that I could put on, and I never, at times, I took a layer off because I was getting too warm pulling the trolley and I didn't want to sweat. A couple of things I did notice when I took my gloves off, like an idiot, you switch off, don't you? You know, Rebel, lie down, please. Rebel, lie down. Sorry, he's scrounging. Lie down. I took my gloves off, stuck them on top of the trolley, and as I say, I was drinking this slush. And like a fool, the gloves froze. And then when I put them back on my hands, I had ice at the ends of my fingertips, and that was not good. But luckily, pulling the trolley warmed my hands up. Then, in future, I always took the gloves off and stuck them inside my jacket, you know, by my chest, where it was nice and warm. That way, even though the gloves were getting wet, they were never getting cold. I had a hat. I pulled the hood over. I was wearing the mountain equipment changabang. And I tell you what a jacket for them kind of conditions. I'm impressed. I thought mountain equipment gear, some of it could be a bit iffy. But I was stunned how well it handled the conditions. At no time did I sweat really bad. And I never really got a wind chill through me, which is good. Anyway, going to the feeding. Before I set off from home, I made some tea cakes, you know, with some butter in and wrapped them in foil. And I thought, I'm for lunch, you know, like you do, thinking you're going to stop for lunch. That wasn't going to happen. But there we are, about, I don't know, 9, 10 o'clock at night. It's getting dark. When I say it's getting dark, it really is getting dark. The temperatures are crazy. We're getting hit by winter storms, you know, blizzards and all this. And I thought, we need something to eat, because if we don't have something to eat, we can't keep going like this. We're burning more energy than we've got on us. So I brought these tea cakes out that were semi-frozen and started breaking them up. And I was having a bite. Dogs, I was giving a bit, you know, taking in turns. And I've got to be honest, I gave them as much as I ate. And they wolfed that down. Going to the dogs, you know, at times I shout at them and I say, like, pack it in. Like, when we set off, they were being idiots. And I was really getting annoyed with them. But when it came to crunch, you know, all the way along that trek, at no time did they whine or moan. At no time did they kind of look as though they were going to give up. They stuck with me, even every time I went back to get the trolley or get the kit and trudging through the snow. And I can't say enough about how good they behaved. You know, they seem to know in their heads, you know, this is serious, so we've got to behave. And they switched on. And even Rogue, the poor little thing, you know, and Stella, you know, her age. I was more worried about the dogs than myself at all times. I knew I could do it. You know what I mean? It would kill me, but I knew I'd do it, you know, getting to the Bothy. But I was more worried one of the dogs dropping or them packing in. When these blizzards are going, and we'll go and get gear, and I had to stop sometimes for a breather and just have a little short rest. Obviously, you don't want to stop too long because the wind is going to be battering you and it's going to make you feel worse. But every time the dogs would spin round in a circle, clear all the snow off a spot and huddle down in the snow. It just shows how, you know, that instinct behaviour teaches them how to behave. So they were getting out because the drifts are getting pretty high, and they'd go up to a drift and kind of spin round, and they'd have a little shelter and huggle down for about 2-3 minutes, and then we'd be off again. The only times we had fun is I had to carry the kit across 2 rivers. First one wasn't too bad. The second one was deeper. And when I mean deeper, it was just near the top of my boots. And I had to do like 3 trips to get the kit all over, because you couldn't do it in the trolley fully loaded because there's pebbles and you'll get stuck and you'll just cause problems. So I emptied some of the gear out of the trolley and got it across the river. Now, Rebel and Stella are used to doing all that, so they were straight beside me. But poor Rogue, she didn't know how to get in the river. She was like, it was freaking out, because we had to break ice to get in some of these rivers, get across. It wasn't like they were just flowing. And obviously the water's freezing. So I had to go back a couple of times and get Rogue and just pull her by the collar and lead her and show her. And she was fine. There was no struggle or anything. It was just she needed to know what to do. So, yeah, bit of an adventure. We got to the Bothy, as I say, 12. I think it was 4 minutes past 12. First thing I did is looked around the Bothies. I was hoping to find some spare wood or something. Obviously, typical, isn't it? When you need something, there's never anything there. I didn't mind. I knew we were going to settle down before what happened. It's getting too late. So, got the dogs settled. Got some water. They weren't interested in no drinks because they hadn't been eating. So I was still drinking the slush, got them covered in these blankets and set their beds up, and they were doing all right. I kept taking the blanket off if I needed to let them go out, but they didn't really want to go out. And every time I felt the blanket, it was nice and toasty, so they were generating heat. It's like now, Rebel, I keep covering him, but he keeps coming, so he ain't that cold, is he? Otherwise he'd stay snuggled up. And as I say, they settled down earlier, but I settled down about 2:30. And I had puffer trousers, I had base layer underneath. I wore my puffer jacket. I was in a good winter sleeping bag. I got the bivvy bag over all of it, and I didn't sweat. There was no condensation inside, no problems with that. It's a Rab bivvy, Alpine bivvy, and it really did well. I thought, I was going to wake up, maybe a bit of condensation on my gear and everything, nothing. So, woke up about 9:30. The dogs didn't really want to get up, but I knew we had to get out and I do this, pick this trolley up with the gear. But I didn't want Stella coming back out, and I left her in the Bothy, as I say, and she seemed quite content about staying in the Bothy. And then happily, thankfully, I'd seen the guy who does the culling and shooting and all that, and he says, you don't get people out here in the winter, and they were still stalking. When I looked on the Bothy book and on sites, it all said September to October for this Bothy. But he says that's stags. He says there's also hinds where they shoot the hinds, and that's from now to February. I can't remember when he told me, to be honest, but he says if there's any problems in future, just ring and find out. So he was more concerned about us running around in the hills, but I said, no, we ain't going to be doing any of that. I said, we'll be staying near the Bothy. Now, the guy seems a bit offish when you chat to him, or a bit kind of, I don't know conservative in his ways, you know what I mean? Doesn't seem openly warm, but I've got to be honest, he's a diamond, you know what I mean? I told him where I dropped the wood. He came over to check if I was okay. He did try and talk me out, turn around. I said, no, we'll go, we'll keep going. So it was my choice. And then today he brought the wood up, and when he passed us, I said, you wouldn't take my gears, would you? And he said, yeah, all right. But he dropped it all off the Bothy. He says, be careful out in the winter if you ever come out again. I says, no, I won't be doing that one again. 8 miles is just too far when the storms are hitting. I overcooked, and I know I made a mistake here. You can never believe the weather forecasters. You can never believe. I check several weather forecasts, the BBC One, the Met Office. I also go on YouTube and check some of the channels on there. There's some even amateur ones that are really spot on. And some of them did say there was like snow coming in, but no one said. I mean, some even said it could be just slushing, it could turn to rain. None of them said it was going to be like severe snow. And I've got to be honest, out there, it's severe. It's no yellow warning. This is a red warning. I mean, I just chatted to as I say, the hind bloke when he was dropping the gear off. He says back there, meaning where we come from, he says it's like 4 foot, 5 foot drifts because of the wind. He says you wouldn't get in or out, you know what I mean? And he says these 4x4 tomorrow won't make it if it carries on snowing through the night. But there's a big fall coming, and things will turn quite quickly. So, as I say, the only issue is crossing rivers in spate, which we'll have to check. I have been here before, and I do know another way to cut out the rivers going across on the other side of the bank to a bridge. So that's paid off for me doing that. Now, I'm sorry this section of video is too long, but I think it'll help people in, considering doing it. I learned a lesson. You can't trust the weatherman. Don't push in too far, because when the weather changes, you can get stuck halfway. And also, don't carry so much gear. But to be honest, I needed every bit of gear. I haven't got nothing. I ain't got no radio. I ain't got no silly extras or anything like that. I ain't got no tablet or anything like that. It's all gear. And as I say, we're having 3 dogs. You've got more gear because you've got an extra dog. So, lesson learnt for me. Going back to the conditions, at no time was it life-threatening, or it was scary at times and, a worry, but at no times was I feeling ill or feeling the conditions are beating me. As I say, I've been doing Arctic warfare and all that, and this many years ago, but you don't forget what you trained. I knew what I had to do and what I didn't do, and as I say, drinking cold slush is not the best thing to do because it's going to lower your core temperature, but you can't be dehydrated. And I'll tell you another thing before I do go. I wanted to test the snow trick, where you grab a handful of snow and put it in your mouth. I know, again, that dehydrates you, but I wanted to try it, and I tell you, it was like eating polystyrene. It was that dry and that kind of crumbly. It took ages to melt in my mouth. It was that dry. So, very, very nasty weather, very severe. If I hadn't had training in the past and hadn't been hardened up to it, I would have been in serious problems. But I've been in Norway. I've seen some really bad conditions when we've been out, in the mountains and all that many years ago. I haven't done anything this severe for a long time. But you don't forget what you're taught and how to keep warm and make sure you don't sweat and all the stuff. All the basics, silly things, but people forget when they're pressured. So as I say, I'm sorry it's long, but I'm sure it helped people, and I'm sure a lot of people laugh, and I'm also sure some people say you're stupid, and I have to agree with you in some places. I was probably a bit silly on this one. I pushed too far, kicking in, but I trusted the weatherman. Silly thing to do, isn't it? You can't trust them. They can predict and tell you what's going to happen, but there's no guarantees, is there? And things can turn. I was going to take a shorter place. I nearly backed out of doing this one. And I was also tempted to do a hot tent in the Cairngorms, but I saw the temperatures there predicted, and they were like -9, -10, -12. If this weather's hit the Cairngorms, which I'm more or less sure it has, them temperatures will even be lower out in amongst the conditions. I'm in here and I'm trying to charge my phone earlier and it wouldn't charge, even though it's plugged into a charger and all that, because it's too cold. Everything's too cold and it's not working. Even your, Nalgene bottle wouldn't screw on. It's plastic top, won't screw on. Everything was not working. The wheels on the trolley I was pulling along were collecting snow because it was sticking to the wheels. It was like a magnet to it. So I was ending up with massive wheels on there that was making it all harder. And the bearings, when I stopped, the bearings in the trolley wheels would freeze. And like on this Bothy, earlier on I shut the door because it was sticking. I couldn't open the door because it had frozen stuck. So I've left it slightly, not massively ajar, but it's about 1/4 inch, because if I force the door shut on this, the wood's swollen and then it's iced up. We could get trapped in the Bothy. But again, I'm sorry it's too long, but I thought it's only best to kind of tell you how it went, because I couldn't film it. To film it would have been crazy. It would have been me being stupid. There's better things to do than start pulling out a camera and filming, isn't it, when you're in them conditions? So, an experience. So we now got, it counts when the fours come in, but I've got plenty of provisions the last 4 days. Easy. We could stretch it even further if it got really bad. But things are going to turn. So when they do turn, everything will be good. And then we can escape. But for the next few days, all I'm going to do is film round here. I'm not going on any ventures or anything like that. We've done more than enough in that one day. So we're just going to be lazy, try and keep warm, because during the day the temperatures even in here, if you ain't got a stove on, a fire on, are quite cold. You know what I mean? I would say, I taught reading here earlier, it was like 1-2 degrees above freezing inside the Bothy. So it's chilly. Right, I'll see you tomorrow. I'm worn out, I'm stiff, I'm aching in several places. I'm getting too old for this, aren't I? Stella definitely is. Look at Rebel. I could try to cover him again in a minute. Right, thanks for taking the time to watch this section of the video if you haven't got bored with it. I'm sorry, I do go on, but I like to explain and tell you what happened rather than just jump to another thing and, you know, no one knows, if that makes sense. But anyway, I'm mumbling and bumbling. I'm tired as well.